I saw a little ASL in the front here. I think we need to teach people that too. I want you guys to do that after I leave. So this third Sunday in June has been for several consecutive years, in other words, the way we've always done it, a pet blessing service, an animal blessing service. And I invited all willing pets to join us in the sanctuary, and I have blessed many others in absentia. And I know there's a few of you who are disappointed not to have your dogs here alongside you, and others of you who are here because those people do not have their dogs alongside them, making your eyes itch and water and your throat close up. Community requires compromise and change. So I will offer a blanket blessing for our pets later in the service. But because this is my final time leading worship as one of the ministers of this congregation, I want to take this opportunity to share my gratitude for this congregation that has held me so well for so long, and for my Unitarian Universalist faith that calls me on. I wanted to write you a letter, a love letter about what I've learned in this beloved community. And I have another paragraph here that I'm not going to say, because in your order of service, it says we're going to sing This Little Light of Mine. But I kept thinking, no, there's another song that's more important to me to sing. I love singing This Little Light of Mine with you guys, but this is a hymn that when I first came to this church made me weep. I was a single mom going through a divorce. Eric was 4. Carl was an infant on my hip. And there was a line about disappointment pierced me through that I couldn't sing. I would just have the tears streaming down my face. I have sung this so many times for so many different occasions that I hear it really differently now. So I invite you to rise in body or spirit and hear this hymn however you need to hear it at this moment. Please rise for Just As Long As I Have Breath. It is number 6 in the gray hymnal, and I did manage to change the slides out before we started. You're one of the fabulous kids up there, and you want to come down for our time for all ages. I'm trying to decide whether to do the pictures. I don't want to do the pictures. No pictures. I'm just gonna, is this working? Yeah. Hey, Rena, you look gorgeous this morning. Hi, Auden. All right, Bob Gabrielli, are you seeing this? Are you seeing these beautiful children? Thank you, parents, for doing the hard work of getting up Sunday morning and getting your little people out the door so that they could be here this morning. This is the hardest part for me in leaving. So I knew what story I needed to tell this morning, and it's the story of the invisible string. And let's see, I bet Everett and Riley, would you guys come sit here with me? And Raina, do you want to be the mom? I'm telling a story, and these are the twins, Liza and Jeremy, and they were asleep one calm and quiet night when suddenly, Jensen, we could make it triplets. You want to come up? No, okay. And suddenly it began to rain very hard, and thunder woke up. "Mommy, Mommy," they cried out as they ran to her. That's your mommy. Come over, Mommy, and sit down and have a chat with them. And she says, "Don't worry, you two. It's just the storm making all that noise. Go back to bed." "We want to stay close to you," said Jeremy. "We're scared." And Mom said, "You know we're always together no matter what. But how can we be together when you're out here and we're in bed?" asked Liza. Mom held something in front of them. Can you hold something just like that in front of them? Thanks. And she said, "This is how." Rubbing their sleepy eyes. Can you rub your sleepy eyes? There you go, perfect. The twins came closer to see what Mommy was holding. Can you see it? What's she holding? I was about your age when my mommy first told me about the invisible string. "I don't see a string," said Jeremy. "Do you see a string?" "No, I don't see a string either." You don't need to see the invisible string. People who love each other are always connected by a very special string made of love. "But if you can't see it, how do you know it's there?" asked Liza. "Even though you can't see it with your eyes, you can feel it with your heart and know that you are always connected to everyone you love. When you're at school and you miss me, your love travels all the way along the string until I feel a tug in my heart. And when you tug it right back, we feel it in our hearts," said Jeremy. "Does Jasper the cat have an invisible string?" Liza asked. "He sure does. She sure does," says Mom. "And best friends like me and Lucy?" "Best friends, too." "How far can the string reach?" "How far do you think, Rena?" 100 miles? Well, you know what Mommy said? What? 800 miles. Mommy said anywhere and everywhere. "Would it reach me even if I were a submarine captain deep in the ocean?" "Yes," said Mom, "even there." "Or a mountain climber?" asked Liza. "Even there." "How about an astronaut out in space?" "Even there." Then Jeremy quietly asked, "Can my string reach all the way to Uncle Stephen in heaven?" "Yes, even there." "Does the string go away when you're mad at us?" What do you think? No, never, said Mom. "Love is stronger than anger, and as long as love is in your heart, the string will always be there. Even when you're older and can't agree on things like what movie to see or who gets to ride in the front seat or when to go to bed." "Oh, that's right, you two should be in bed." And with that, they laughed as Mom chased the twins back to bed. And within a few minutes, they were asleep and started dreaming of all the invisible strings they have and all the strings their friends have and their friends have and their friends have until everyone in the world was connected by invisible strings. No one is ever truly alone. And although I am leaving and I won't see you here, I am always going to be connected to you by that invisible string because we have known each other and loved each other. Thank you, Mike. I tried to write a sermon. I started one, wrote it for a while, and then thought, no, that's not it. Put it down at the bottom of the script in case I wanted it later. Started it in a different way. That didn't feel like it either. This letter is so hard to write. But who else listened to Jefferson Airplane? I want to see hands. Yes, old people. Oh, even some of the young people, yes, okay. So when I was a teenager, I listened to Jefferson Airplane quite a lot in various teenage hangout spaces. My cousins had this fabulous bunkhouse that was just us, separate from the main house where the grown-ups and the younger cousins were, and we would listen to music. And one of their songs, The Crown of Creation, has a lyric that just stuck with me, has been with me ever since, and has been on my mind a lot in recent months. Life is change, how it differs from the rocks. When I found here that I was a minister, it surprised me. It scared me to finally come to the point where you all had been telling me for a while, you should be a minister. I'm like, no, I don't think so. Mike actually came to me once and said, when you're ready to go to seminary, let me know, and Sherry and I will help. He doesn't remember saying that, and I was like, how much can I ask for? So they gave me my study Bible, which I treasure, and it looks nice and used because I had it in my bag with a thermos of tea that wasn't quite sealed. So it really has a sort of antique look. But that moment of realizing that I would never, teaching, which I also loved doing, would never use my best gifts in the way that ministry would. And I was just sitting by myself in my house. My heart started to pound like I was being chased by a bear or a man in the woods. And I sent inquiries to some seminaries and ended up taking my first seminary class that was called the Theology and Meaning of Call. Seemed like a good place to start, figure out, all right, why am I doing this? What is this? What is this thing? It was all online. It was at Andover Newton. I never saw even a photograph of the professor or any of my classmates, and figured out from their writing that a couple of them, English wasn't their first language. And what I learned about call in that class that I remember, there's a lot I don't remember, but there was a definite through line of stories where the divine says, excuse me, you, I want you to do this thing for me. And the person's like, me, you don't mean me, not me. And I think all of us have those moments where there's a choice in front of us, and it takes, like, we're taught, or at least women, I don't know if men are taught this in the same way, but to sort of be self-effacing and, it was really no big deal. But there's a point where we have to say, you know what? I have this spark in me, and I'm called to let it shine, to let it do its thing, to do this next thing that's scary, that's, sort of a bridge not a bridge. You know when you're crossing a stream and you're going stone to stone and you don't know how slippery they're going to be, but you need to get to the other side, so you do it. Sometimes you fall in the water, but you do it. And I didn't go to seminary to be a minister of lifespan faith development or a religious educator, but when the job was open, I thought, I love this place. Working with Michael has been an education that is priceless. And to get to come back here and continue that education with all of you and with Michael was very appealing. So I'm like, well, I'm going to try it. I also still had a kid in high school, not that one, but the other one. And so I was geographically limited. So I came and I tried it. And parts of it fit and parts of it have never really felt like quite my size. And that's true of every job. And so I put myself into it, and Michael has been amazing about trying to, when he works with his staff, he tries to let each of us use our best gifts and to support each other in the areas where we print the order of service upside down. So he has done a lot to make room for me, to let me preach, to let me lead some things. But last summer, I went to a clergy retreat called Soul Works. And the first question they asked us after the introductions and who are you and where do you come from was, what is supporting your call and what is eroding it? And the moment the question was out of his mouth, I reacted. I'm like, are the kids all out? Okay. I was like, shit. I don't want to answer that question because I already knew what the answer was, and that what's holding me back is staying here in this place I love so much, with people I love so much. So I thought about it. I wrote about it. I tried to figure out how do I stay? How do I feel? And I was the one who proposed to Michael that we change my title from Minister of Lifespan Faith Development to Associate Minister, because it certainly better recognized the work that I was already doing. But it didn't change that. And it didn't change the fact that Michael's still the senior minister who has to, you called him to preach, and to lead, which he does very, very well. And it was at a ministry retreat in March, I think, where I was together with colleagues and spoke out loud to a couple of them who I really trust about my frustration and my sense that, I am limiting myself and I don't want to leave, but the divine is saying, Lyn, this isn't your highest, best use of yourself. And so on the way home from that retreat, I took a really deep breath and said, Michael, it's time for me to go. And it's not the first time I've talked with him about the idea that maybe there was a year where I thought about going into search and really went far enough to say at that time, no, I'm choosing this. And that was good for me to choose this and be fully present with this. But this past year, I haven't been doing so well and haven't felt fully present. And so to say to him, I'm leaving, for me, was the instant feeling was, this is what I'm supposed to do. This is right. I haven't ever questioned the decision, I've grieved. I will continue to grieve. But I know it's the right move. And anyway, enough about that. Oh, and then Michael, being Michael, remained very calm, and I'm sure it wasn't, great news for him. He had another very important employee also leaving, and he said, what do you think you'll do if you could do anything? What would you do? And I said, I was like, I'd take a gap year and just, do what you got to do on sabbatical. And it came out of my mouth, and I was suddenly like, oh, there's nothing stopping me from doing that. I can do that. I have the financial resources to be able to do that. I'm going to borrow from my retirement and, just take 1 year early before figuring out, how am I called to serve Unitarian Universalism next year. And I don't want this sermon to be only about me, because as life calls me on, life is also calling the congregation on. Life is change. That's how it differs from the rocks. And so I have some sticky notes up here of things I wanted to be sure that I said. They don't stick to this thing, but I wanted to be sure I sort of said these. So they're not going to be in any particular, well-strung order, but the first one is love first and ask questions later. That was my experience of this congregation when I showed up with my marriage on the rocks, heartbroken, grieving, exhausted because I wasn't sleeping and I was nursing a baby. That my very first Sunday of lighting a candle, and I'm looking for Nancy, but I know she's out there somewhere. There she is. The first Sunday I lit a candle, I had Carl on my hip. He was 9 months old, and my husband had moved out that Tuesday. And I said, it's a joy and a sorrow, because there was a relief to knowing what was next. Was it what I wanted? No. And did I want to stay in a marriage where I was miserable and felt unloved? No. So I lit my candle with sort of hope that things would now improve for me, for my ex-husband, for my kids, that we wouldn't be living on eggshells as we had been. As soon as the postlude ended, I was sitting over here. There was a hand on my shoulder, a little crowd of women. It was women first. For the first 2 weeks, when I came back, there was a different crew of women who surrounded me, and then the men began slowly approaching and asking how I was doing. So love first, and get to know people if they stick around. The next lesson comes from Buddhism. And there's a story that the Buddha said to someone. I don't know how this teaching happened because I'm not good at this, remembering scriptures and stuff, but Buddha said there's no one, you could search the whole world looking for someone more deserving of loving kindness than you yourself, and you will not find them. Love one another and cherish your own being. There is no one more deserving of loving kindness, compassion, than you. The next is to lead with curiosity. I've learned so much here about staying in relationship through conflict and struggle. And the saving grace is always to be curious about the other person's experience. Why is this person upset? How can I help? If you remain curious instead of defensive, there is so much good that comes of it. The board has been going through a process of asking the powerful question, and the question was written by a committee, so it's kind of long and involved, and we have in the board covenant that we will, once we've reached a decision as a board, we'll speak with one voice, but I'm leaving. You can't fire me at this point, so. I want to say I've had a hard time with a powerful question because it's so long, and I think really the question, I hope, as you struggle with the specifics of this, the question always about our mission and about our vision is, what does love require of us? What does love require of us now? If we were acting from a place of love, and John Warner, if you're out there, I learned this from you, if we weren't afraid, what would we do? I hope this congregation will continue to ask, what does love require of us? And to answer boldly and with joy and caring for one another and for our community in the ways that this congregation will be called to. I can't remember where I started that sentence. Anyway, do that thing. And I want to make sure Noah gets to work on time. So so many of you last week walked up to me and stood in front of me just like this. And I feel it too. And I love you. And I wish you all the very best. And my invisible string will always come back to this place, which is the home of my soul. Amen. And may it be so. Thank you. I'm still going to ask you for money. Have a seat.